One of the questions I am asked most frequently is if I'm still on hormonal birth control and not willing or able to get off it at this time, will a pro-metabolic lifestyle still benefit me? So I'm here today to talk about this question. The answer is a resounding yes. This lifestyle is one of the most supportive things you can do for your body on or off hormonal birth control, and we are going to get into how and why that is.
Baby, you give me eyes.
Before I get started, let me just say that I am not an expert on this topic. I am just an individual who is very passionate about the pro-metabolic lifestyle, holistic wellness as a whole. Everything I am talking about here, and I do and say on this channel, are just close to my heart. And I've seen this question a lot, so I want to address it for the sake of making this lifestyle accessible to everybody, and showing you that it really can benefit you regardless of where you are at. So think about this as simply a summary of my research to help you jumpstart your own research, and do what I just said. Make this a little bit more accessible and applicable to you, regardless of where you are at. An episode of Are You Menstrual podcast on how to transition off hormonal birth control really inspired a lot of the content that I'm going to be going over in today's video. I looked at a bunch of different sources, but I think this is just a wonderful resource, whether you're transitioning off hormonal birth control or staying on hormonal birth control, on how a pro-metabolic lifestyle can support you. So I will link that below, and if you want a deeper dive and some reinforcement for this material, I encourage you to go and check that out. I'm also going to link a few videos below on what hormonal birth control does to the body and how to find an alternative, essentially, if you are interested in that, in the description box. So you'll have all of that there. Have a lot of content on related topics that I will try to link so you can access those resources, but so I don't have to rehash it all here. That being said, we're going to be going over three main points. These are all closely tied together, and they're also connected to other things, of course, such as our blood sugar balance and our liver support. But I think the three main things that it boils down to when it comes to how a pro-metabolic approach, lifestyle, diet is going to support your body on birth control are going to be: number one, your stress response; number two, it's going to be your mineral depletion, or rather we'll say your nutrient balance; and number three, it's going to be your digestion. So let's hop right into our stress response. So birth control is going to be a low level stressor. If you want to know why and how that works, I do encourage you to check out the podcast, again, that I am linking below. She goes into that in more depth, and I don't want to mess up that explanation, so I'm going to leave it to Amanda. But it is a low-level stressor on the body. It can cause excess cortisol, and cortisol kind of being released at times that it shouldn't necessarily be released. So one of the best possible things we can do for our body is proper nourishment, and that's going to tie into some of the main things we talk about here all the time when it comes to starting a pro-metabolic lifestyle, and that is going to be eating within your first 30 minutes to hour of waking, pretty much as soon as possible when you wake, eating every about 3 to 4 hours to help keep your blood sugar balanced. And we're always going to want to balance our protein, carbs, and fat. And doing these three things is going to help us prevent cortisol from spiking and staying elevated by keeping our blood sugar in check, and thus keeping our hormones where they need to be. So that's one of the biggest things we can do. I will link below my pro-metabolic, essentially where to get started video for more information on what that looks like and why we do those things. Another thing we can really do is prioritize sleep. I know you hear this talked about a lot, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but your body really does need sleep to recover, to support every system in it, and so making that a priority will really help you out. Also, just having time outside under natural light, especially first thing in the morning, is going to be really supportive of your circadian rhythms. And something like taking a walk upon first waking, after you've eaten, of course, but within the first hour or so, I would say, of the morning time, going outside, taking a walk, or maybe just stepping out with a cozy drink on the porch or with your breakfast on the porch, and spending time under the sun can really help with your circadian rhythm. And then taking a walk is going to help you kind of burn off some of the cortisol that comes to be upon waking. So those are really great. And with that is going to be supportive exercise. I am in the middle right now of a whole series on pro-metabolic workouts, which you can definitely check out. But I would even take a step back with this and say, we're just thinking about working out and moving in a way that is going to work with our body instead of against it. And so that means not not forcing yourself into high intensity exercise when you are not feeling like it, honoring your body in that place and learning to kind of decipher between what actually true laziness looks like versus your body telling you that it needs something and you resisting that cue. But that ties in once again to the walks. And if you want more information on what pro-metabolic workouts look like, feel free to check them out. I'm just saying here that this could look different for everybody, and especially if you are in that state of kind of baseline stress that's being added on because of the birth control, we might need to take that into account when choosing the intensity of the exercise at play. So that's the stress element, figuring out how to manage our stress. A pro-metabolic lifestyle is centered largely around minimizing stress and building a body that is more resilient to it. So I think that is just a key way in which this lifestyle can really help you out. Next is going to be our nutrient balance. And before I get into this conversation, I just want to remind you that usually it is never, rarely is it as simple, we'll say, as you're simply missing one mineral, missing one vitamin. Our vitamins and minerals work in balance with each other. So don't just jump to, oh, I should start supplementing these things. You need to take into account the whole bioavailability aspect, as well as the ratios aspect. So again, check out that Getting Started with Pro-Metabolic video for a little bit more guidance there. It's a whole series, and I think it's in the second or third video that I talk about it, but you can check that out. But in terms of what the pill itself or any form of hormonal birth control is going to be depleting, a few things in particular are vitamin A, a lot of your B vitamins, magnesium, things like potassium, and then iron is actually not depleted, but oftentimes we're gonna see way too much iron in the body, which I will get into in a moment. But in terms of nutrient balance, one of the best things we can do for the body is eat foods, whole food sources that are going to support these nutrients. So when it comes to vitamin A, eating high quality dairy, eating high quality pasture raised eggs, and even eating liver. I've talked about liver plenty of times before, how to make raw liver shots. Planning to do a video relatively soon on how you can kind of incorporate it into your diet in a more accessible way, but you always want to make sure that your liver is going to be grass-fed, pasture-raised, high quality. You know where it's coming from so that you can get the good stuff from it and are avoiding any potential bad stuff. So once again, it's going to be dairy, eggs, liver are big ones, other foods obviously, but we're thinking about that retinol form of vitamin A, not the beta carotene when we talk about vitamin A in our diets for the most part. Then you're gonna have vitamin B, and when it comes to vitamin B rich foods, a couple really big sources are just gonna be animal proteins, always doing our best to make sure that those are, again, well sourced. Grass fed is gonna have a completely different kind of makeup than non-grass fed beef in particular, or if you think about a ruminant, if it's being fed grain all the time versus grass all the time, it's gonna be very different in terms of its composition. And then liver as well is gonna be fantastic for your B vitamins. Magnesium is another big one. This is one where I actually do supplement. I think that it's very difficult to get enough magnesium in your diet because of soil depletion, which I know I've talked about before. But that being said, you don't want to find just any random, we'll say, magnesium supplement, because there are many different kinds and they're going to act differently in the body. I do have a video on pro-metabolic supportive supplements where I go in more depth, but two forms that I tend to look out for are going to be magnesium glycinate and magnesium malate is pretty bioavailable forms. You can also add it in topically, whether it's magnesium salt into your bath, a spray, or something like that. But this is something that most people are low in to begin with, again, because of the soil depletion element, but that is really, really, really depleted when you are on the pill. And so we should be very adamant to make sure we're getting enough of it. It's late in the day and I apologize if my words are running together. And it also is really crucial when it comes to your stress response. It is the mineral that is burned through pretty much first anytime there is stress. And then adrenal cocktails, implementing those is fantastic for supplementing potassium, sodium, and then your whole food vitamin C. I love to do just some orange juice, some coconut water. Sometimes I'll add in some coconut cream as well, always a little pinch of sea salt. These things go really wonderfully together. Trying to have at least one of those a day, and just making sure to have potassium rich foods as a whole, and having enough sodium in your diet from a mineral rich sea salt, not shying away from sodium in our whole foods is going to be really important. So let's talk briefly about the iron piece. So women naturally absorb actually a lot more iron than men do, just from our diet, from the environment. Our bodies are made to take up a lot more of it, and that is in the context of us having a monthly period. And a lot of times when we're on hormonal birth control, you are not having your cycle. You're not having your monthly bleed, and if you are, it's not actually a true period. It's not as substantial as a true period would be, and bleeding is the only way to actually get rid of excess iron. And of course, having too much iron can throw other things out of proportion, especially if you're on hormonal birth control, but really anytime. If you ever hear that, oh, you're anemic or you do not have enough iron, I would encourage you to look into further testing or start with vitamin C, start with copper. Again, please don't take this as medical advice, but usually it is not iron in isolation. It's the cofactors. Vitamin C, like we talked about, vitamin A is going to be really important. And then of course I'm blanking. Okay, copper. That's going to be the other thing that's really important to iron being able to be utilized in the body. And that's a total tangent, but just bear that in mind, especially if you are on the pill or on hormonal birth control of some kind and you're not bleeding regularly, that it's most likely more complicated than that. So this is, I would say, a more advanced piece of information, and in the podcast, Amanda definitely kind of warns against this in certain situations because it can be stressful and it can be depleting. So just give it consideration, work with your practitioner, but something that some people will actually do to help get rid of excess iron in the body is going to be doing blood draws every once in a while, every couple months, to help get some of that out of your system, specifically blood donations. And that can really help for some people get levels in check, but it's important to bear in mind that you are burning a lot of excess calories on days when you're doing that because your body is having to produce more blood because it's a stressful experience, and that you might not feel the best. So I think that that is a great option, and it can be a really good thing to do to help other people as well, but just take into account everything that's going on there before making that decision. So moving on to the last piece of the puzzle, that's going to be digestion. Now, in short, hormonal birth control can kind of throw out, please don't throw up, throw out the balance of bacteria in our guts. And so it can be important to prioritize pre and probiotic foods here. Prebiotic foods such as oats, cooked leafy greens, things like apples, bananas, onions, garlic, anything like that is going to be really important to help feed the good bacteria in your gut. And one thing that you probably have heard if you're familiar with the pro-metabolic space has to do with those probiotic foods. Some people actually tend to overdo the fermented foods and probiotic foods, and you can run into issues if you have an overgrowth there. So again, I think that's something to definitely check in with your practitioner about. But if you do decide to add in some probiotic foods, just do it in moderation. It's great for anybody to have in moderation, but it's when we start going overboard that we have a problem. So something that I like to do is just like a spoonful of sauerkraut. I don't do that every day, but I know for some people it works well to do that every day. And just a little anecdote, purely anecdotal evidence. My husband had to get on antibiotics for a really bad ear infection a while back, and it completely messed up his belly. And I mean, there was no explanation other than that. He was just having a terrible time for weeks, and we kind of figured out that the antibiotics probably did it, and he started adding in just sauerkraut and kefir, eating more than I would recommend eating on a consistent basis, but by simply adding that in, his stomach problems like completely completely went away. And so that can also be really helpful, at least anecdotally, if you are on antibiotics. I am very skeptical of probiotic supplements, because something that you often run into with these is maybe they have a bunch of bacteria in them, but it will be only one or two or a few types of bacteria, whereas we really want a diverse microbiome. And if we're only adding in a few types of bacteria to our guts, even if they are beneficial, they're not going to be beneficial if they crowd out everything else that's in there. That being said, in the podcast, Amanda does recommend one in particular, which you can check out if you're interested. But I think things like sauerkraut and kefir can be a really good whole foods place to start. But that's the long and short of it, y'all. I hope that this is helpful. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please do let me know down in the description box. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Until next time, bye y'all.